Welcome to East Meets West. And on this program today, I have my beloved professor, Dr. McKenzie. She's a retired banker and with her banking career spans over 3 decades, working in 2 largest banking institutions in Jamaica. Her areas of expertise include the leadership of the implementation and support unit with oversight of the banking platforms and online banking systems, quality assurance, system testing, preparation of user manual, general banking, and the lecturer, logistic coordinator. Oh, she is very well equipped in what she's going to share here today with us too. And Dr. McKenzie currently, she serves as the director of the Masters of Arts in Transformation Leadership degree at Bakke Graduate University. And yes, as I said, she's one of my beloved professor. And her community involvement comprises of services as a lay preacher, life coach, business advisor, justice of peace, and lay magistrate. Oh, she has a lot behind her. And I know for sure that as you listen to her, you're going to have a lot of aha moments that I call our BFOs, blinding flashes of the obvious. And she's going to connect you with things that you might not even thought about. And you're going to open your mind to something differently. So Dr. McKenzie's life goal is to empower those she serves to unearth and live out their potential as gifted individuals with a distinct purpose. And she believes her beliefs is the essential element in making the world a better place. And I think we share that in common. Well, we shared a few things because I worked at the bank too for 6 years, and we both have a heart to see people live their full potential. You know, when you reach, for me, I say to people that when you reach to the end of your life, there should be no regrets, that you have done everything that you're placed on this earth to do, and you have lived a life of significance. So doing these programs is to help our viewers and how to live with purpose. And today is a special topic. We're talking about calling, and Dr. McKenzie is the expert and the person that that will help you understand that word. And also the part that she introduced me to is the dark side of your calling, and that is something that I never thought about. But we're going to hear from Dr. McKenzie, and I'll ask her to if there's anything else you'd like to add before we go into this discussion.
My Dr. Prasad, I just want to begin. The only thing I want to add is to just congratulate you. And tell you how proud I am of you and how honored I am to share on this platform, which I do believe is in itself a ministry. So I'm happy to be with you, and I'm happy to be able to let your platform know how much you are equipping yourself. And now, as the Doctor of Transformational Leadership, you're actually putting that into play for all of us to lead to excellence, as I see behind you. Thank you. You've asked me to talk on this subject, which would take a very long time. And let's see how I can talk on it shorter than the introduction you gave me. All right. And a couple of thoughts came to my mind, and this is how I want to introduce the idea of calling. I am not gifted at anything, someone may say. I am not called to do anything specific. Familiar words. I am unworthy of any kind of calling, because we see calling as being gifted with special abilities. And so we have no question on the fact that Usain Bolt was gifted to run, right? We know that Martin Luther King was gifted to speak and convict, and we look at those as gifts. And we look at ourselves and we say, I don't. And then if you are a student of scripture, or even if you're not, let me introduce Ephesians 2:10, which says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." Our God intended for us to be good, to do good works, and he prepared that. So what did he prepare? You might be saying to yourself, I am exempted from that. I've made all these mistakes. I have no reputation, or not the reputation I think I ought to have. I am mediocre. I didn't make the A's at school, and go on. I have no gifts, and yet I'm saying to all of you today that you were created for good, and that creation was done by one who doesn't lie, and one who knows you from every hair on your head is actually numbered. I think you'd agree that the Creator knows. So let's look at some people you might be familiar with who may have felt, one, I'm not gifted, I'm not worthy of the call, and I can't do anything. I could wrap that all up in one person that you might be familiar with. And I take that from the Bible because it's a place where we know a lot of characters. Moses said, you couldn't ask me to speak because I have a speech impediment. I stammer. You couldn't be calling me to lead because, you know, I ran away from that community because I committed a crime. Obviously, yes, there's a burning bush, and yes, things are evident that you're God, you're calling me into something, but it couldn't be me. And yet, beforehand, he was created, saved even because he should have died, right? But placed in that basket, he got the exquisite life. So one could say he was prepared, he was equipped. Because again, we know that for that which we are called to do, we are equipped to do it. And the question is, do we understand our equipping as acts of equipping, or do we see them as tragedies and things that have gone wrong? All right. So would an act of equipping be that he was rescued and given the life within the palace so that he knew the nature of the task? He was familiar with the place to which he would be sent. Would this crime of murder, and I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that there is justification for the evil we do, right? But did that act bring to the fore the heart he had for the oppressed? Again, man looks at the obvious and God looks at the heart. And when I examine that story, the lesson for me and for you is that whereas you may have used your achievement, what we have achieved, and we look culturally at those who have achieved and we do that comparison, it is clear that in all the situations in which we have been placed that would make us good or less than good, we are being thought of as the motive. What is the motive? God is looking at the heart. And when it comes down to the heart view, that's really between you and God. But the gist of using this biblical character is one to show that God does not determine the activity, the call, the mission, based on our understanding of what is required. Yeah. And that the circumstances in our lives, be them good, as we saw a good one, he had a good life in the palace, we assume, right? Or bad, as having to run away from having committed a murder, right? Are all working together to determine where we go from there. And the master architect, I like to think of life as created for good beforehand. So the script of the play is written. And we're just coming on stage from birth to death to do our performance. It's not our story. One of my pastors reminded me, and that sank in. Our lives is not our story. It's God's story. Right? It's God's story. If it was our story, we would decide to write out acts in the play that did not conform to our vision of what's right or wrong or good or evil, right? Yeah. We may even suspend death and illnesses and so on. But when we seriously look at it, it's not our story. And so then, all of us, with no exception, have been created for good. And none of us are operating at a space where the experiences we have, the all things, are not working for good. We may choose not to see it, or we may be limited by our circumstances to not see it. But let us establish that we were created for good and we have a gift. We have gifts. Let us establish that what stands between ourselves and our gifts is what we believe. Because if we believe we don't have it, we won't see it. If we believe that what we have, we should be given something else, like what Dr. Prasad have. We should have a blog too. I don't have a blog, right? Then we will be focusing on the desire for other than we have, rather than tapping in. And sometimes, as we did in our interaction, we tend to have persons coming alongside us to help us see the gift. And that requires discernment, but most of all, it requires, for those of us who are listening right now, the desire to see the good in each other. So what if someone who's been using the gift of being persuasive to manipulate persons, to take from them what they have? Don't we have a lot of that?
Yep.
Right? The scammings and all that kind of thing. There is a survey done in Jamaica that pointed to the fact that the persons in the prison system had a higher IQ than those outside.
Yeah.
Talents, gifts, channeled creatively to disrupt and do evil. And so we talk about the dark side, right? Because what we often do is to critique the evil, but not to see how beneath all of this is a gift and a talent, which if rechanneled.
Dr. McKenzie, if I may add in here, when we think of calling, and you started off talking about, many of us may not think that we are called to do something per se, or maybe I'm not good enough for that, right? I don't have what it takes to do this particular thing. And I know for me personally too, that I had struggled a lot trying to find what was I, put on this earth to do. And I know many people are searching for that right now. And some of us, or some may be like me, that don't want to reach to the end of my life and say that, oh no, I missed my purpose. I missed the mark that I was supposed to do. But what would you say though, that to help someone before we go into the dark side of the calling? How, or what guides would you give us to find that calling?
I pointed to a little bit of that when we started off. And I spoke to what we imagine it ought to be. All right? And this can be a major blocker to seeing who we are and what we're called to do. And it is best done through an example. All right? I had to seriously sit to think, who am I? What is it you want me to do, Lord? Where is the next step? And that happens at a phase of your life. You have experienced that early, right? I had been change of career. I was going into retirement and I didn't need to struggle with this thing. I wanted to tell God what we were going to be and do together because it was all good. But as I contemplated that, I recognized that part of the reason why I struggled so much, it was because I had in my mind and thought that this thing had to be named, what it had to look like, and how it had to be recognized. So I was walking in what for others looking on is a purpose, I didn't value it. It didn't have a name. It didn't have a title. And when I finally, after 5 years, came into a release and a peace with it, I was just called to journey alongside persons. Can that be a calling? I was just called to create the environment for persons to flourish. One could argue I'm just a mere encourager. So someone says doctor and lay magistrate and this and that and the other. In every aspect of what I do in these various places, what comes out is this thing. So the question, Dr. Prasad, is understanding that this is unique to you, right? Trusting your heart. And so God lays on your heart what it is He wants you to do. And oftentimes we feel it's not enough. What if it is a season that what is laying on your heart is grandma needs to be taken care of? It's a burden, it's a whatever, but it is also a call to give of what He has created in you. And the trouble with that is to feel that this call, this burden is laid on your heart is not important. It's not it. There is something else. Because we're people of seasons, right? But the gift would be the call to care for, to nurture, to provide a space of healing for somebody, to be a healer, a caregiver, right? The trouble is, if I don't see it as a call and I'm miserable inside because I'm waiting for God to send me this major stuff, not that I'm saying you won't move to bigger and greater things, but I would want to say where you are now is purposed. And the call would be to give from your heart into the space you are. Is it to just teach someone some math because they're struggling? God is setting you up to really become the person who unlocks the door for someone else who would become. And so you're the conduit, you're not necessarily the product. Right? And when you become the product, you understand that the gift and the calling wasn't so much for your status and position, and to even be said that you did, but it is so that you can pour it into those who are in need, because we are His hands, His feet, His whatever, right?
As you speak, I thought this is what, is revealing for me, is that you're where you are. Where you are right now is where you need to be. So that's what I'm thinking of. Okay, whatever it might be that someone is doing, that's where you're to be right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm remembering your words, trust the process.
Trust the process.
So what if this is the process to, get to a next stage of life, which you might not know, and coming back to this script that your role that you're playing right now, what if that is exactly what you're supposed to be playing? So trust it, and then you see the results in the end, whatever that might be for you.
Yeah.
But that makes so much sense, that we fight, with ourselves so much, that we should be doing this, we should not be there, we're in this constant battle
The
in thinking.
turmoil that is inside. Yes.
Yeah, and so I'm for me, it's when we had our sessions, is like I've just felt so at peace that you're where you're supposed to be right now. Be comfortable with that and be okay with that, and just continue and trust the process of what this entails right now in your life. And that was so powerful.
I give you an example of that just to move from there. There are some specific things that are now delayed because I'm here. And they have been delayed yesterday and the day before and the day before. And the natural tendency is to feel, wow, you know what happens when deadlines are not met and so on. And yet there is something that is saying to me, I am ordering your steps. And if I'm with you for these few minutes, that's where I want you to be. That's the part of my script that I have identified that you're playing. Now, I can do all kinds of things, but at the end of the day, I still don't achieve the things I set out for myself. So sometimes out of bumping against the wall, I yield. Have you ever had some of those things where you yield because your personal efforts just keep coming down to naught? But age has shown me,
Sorry.
yes, age has shown me that he's always right. And when I go to rest tonight and I envision the day, giving myself to this rather than be thinking about that while I'm here, usually feels more fulfilling than meeting the other deadline. And I think it happens to most of us. You ever felt rushed, but somebody stops you? And there are two responses. I'm called to this person this moment. Christ is there using me to be, because he has equipped me for this call. And I recognize it. Or I have no time for you, I have to move on. But then when you moved on, what you moved on to never happened anyway. Right? I get it a lot of times when somebody is being terrible as a driver. And I feel every ounce of discipline to not let them in, where in the traffic or something. Yeah. And then I hear them telling somebody thanks behind me by a toot of the horn because the person behind me let them in. And if you probably were to look back, the person behind you who did that act of kindness was not focused on being called to be the disciplinarian. They're probably listening their music, they're totally at peace, and they're just doing something good. And you wish you were that person. Call. And so when we think, maybe I'm saying, the calling and the gift is more an intentional, conscious response to the moment than it is a long-term plan. I'm going to be prime minister by so and so, because we're growing into that. And when that time comes, it will come. But there are a lot of prime ministerial duties that won't count right now, which is the training ground that is ushering us to that other place, right? A conscious, intentional understanding of who I am, how I am created, what these circumstances have told me about myself.
Yep.
How is God using them to affirm me, to train me, to restrain me, to teach me, to equip me for the cause?
And those are the questions we need to ask ourselves as we go by. So, Dr. McKenzie, now the other side, yes, we learn of our callings, then, this idea of there's a dark side of the calling too.
Yes, and sometimes it is so difficult to identify, right? Because I like to say that very often our motive and our intention is good. I give you an example. I'm called to be, I talk about creating an environment for people to flourish. Nestled inside of that is a proverbial host. I just love to love on you. If you're in my space, I want you to be comfortable. If I'm hosting, I'm going to make sure that you're over. I had a situation where I was actually doing the logistics for a large gathering of people from all over the world, right? And the speaker during the break was always being engaged by the participants. And so the speaker was not getting a break. So they would walk up to him with their food and their drink, but they're engaging him. And I saw that, and the proverbial host meant I would run with something. So since this is a standing, talking conversation, he would be eating too. One day the speaker said to me, "You disabled people, I don't need your help because I don't need you to disable me." Wow. Embarrassed. I felt misunderstood. And yes, I went into my defense mode. Hey, this is all I'm doing. But listen to your criticisms, because it posed a question for me. Do I, in this effort to see to it that everything is done for everybody, prevent them from making the effort to do it for themselves? Think about it. That speaker wasn't handicapped, and if he had felt that he wanted to have a drink and eat a sandwich while he spoke, he had all the ability to go get it. It wouldn't have changed anything. But more importantly, he saw the part of me that was going too far. So even with my children, whatever I'm doing, I'm constantly asking myself, is this an act of charity or is this an act of disabling?
That is a very deep question.
The dark side of this gift of generosity that I have is my ability to disable those I serve. And I use that example because everybody can now look at what they're doing. You see it with pastors who are burnt out. You see it with people who no longer like their job, who are at the top of their game and they fail because somehow intrinsic to what they were doing is something that was not helpful at all. You see it in missions, where we go and we look at a situation and we say, this person needs help. We never see where the help that this person needs is a reorientation of the mind to think that they are capable of doing what we're going to do for them. And so we bring in the relief, but there is no development. We bring in the relief, but there is no advocacy for systemic, right? And so we grow a nation that is just dependent on relief. So in that act of providing relief, is there a dark side?
I can think of so many nations right now as you're speaking, and the thought, sometimes I do think that people intentionally do that, and some may unintentionally be doing that, not knowing that by doing this, I'm disabling people. But some of them actually use that to intentionally to disable people.
That's true. And we go back to one thing, motive.
Yep.
Because even if that dark side is driven by ignorance, God looks at it. That takes me to how we question gifting sometimes. Saul, think of him. He had just done what was necessary to cause the demise of Stephen, we're told. Martyrdom of Christians. Of all the persons to be chosen, why Saul? Equipped, a philosopher of philosophers, educated, with abilities that were intrinsic to spreading the gospel, called to go even in shipwrecks to places where the 12 would not have gone. Equipped, right? And we saw the dark side. That dark side was out of zealous ignorance, knocked down and shown the truth. He was already given the gift of earnest, non-compromising zeal. That didn't change. It was just rerouted. I look at him and I say, okay, I understand what it means to hold the gift, and I understand how we can use the gift in ways that hurt and in ways that are truly. And the thing here is the transition to listening. And the doing is one thing, but we have to do the being first. Being in communication, hearing, surrounding ourselves with persons who are hearers too, and discerners. And each of us, like what you're doing, find a route to identify and encourage the gift we see in others, affirm it, so that where they are not even considering it as worthwhile, we're building them up. I have benefited from even you saying to me in my old age, you're saying something that I want to hear. That's an affirmation. And you probably didn't even realize you were affirming me, but it was important.
And Dr. McKenzie, I can, as I said earlier, that I could just listen to you all the time. I learned so much from you, and it's not surface level learning, it's really deep. And that deep dissecting and understanding and getting to a place where many of us actually don't go.
It's true.
And that's what I get from you when I am in conversation with you. That's where you take me. And I know for our audience here today, oh my, I think I would do advise, listen to this, this, what Dr. McKenzie shared today over and over. Listen and understand, listen, examine, listen and do something about where you're at right now in life. And that part of it, it's when you find it, it's so powerful. It's so powerful that this is what I'm here for, not all these different things that you might have thought about. But this is it. And when you immerse yourself into it, there's peace and there's joy and there's this calmness of just you. And that part of it, it's, unless you experience it, you will not know what Dr. McKenzie is talking about here today or what we're speaking on. But Dr. McKenzie, before we close off the session here, as you said in the beginning, it's not enough time to actually dive into even deeper into these areas. And I know many people might have a lot of questions on things with their personal life. And I do encourage our audience to post your questions. Dr. McKenzie would love to answer it. And anything maybe you would like to add or comment, please do so in the comments below that you share your thoughts, to share maybe your experience too, and how you find your calling. And maybe now that you understand that there's a dark side of the calling, examine what part of it that maybe, you know what, I need to look back here. Am I actually helping, or am I enabling behaviors that maybe shouldn't be enabled? And so it's just re-examining those things that we do, the thoughts that we have, and see where do we fall into. And I love that you said listening, because when we listen, we're gonna know where to go and what to do. And that part of it comes with a lot of by yourself moments, I call it. And
Yes.
just quietly listen. So Dr. McKenzie, before I close the program off, is there anything else you would like to bless us with today?
Dr. Prasad, I would end with an affirmation. And I end with an affirmation because in our side of this culture, the West, we're often told how to be in the negative, the do nots. And we very rarely hear the do. And yet scriptures for us, if we really dissect it, it's far more into the be than the do not be. And so part of the struggle we have with gifts and calling is a sense of unworthiness, a sense of it not being important enough. I go back to where I began. A sense of, because I have been living so much in the zone of the guilt, I'm unable to see the redemptive nature that has been placed within me. And I like this bit of Hebrews, where the writer ended what he had to say in his letter this way. May the God of peace, notice the God of peace, not of turmoil and guilt and shame, but may the God of peace, who through the blood of the eternal covenant brought back from the dead our Lord Jesus, that great shepherd of the sheep, may that God of peace equip you with everything good for doing his will, and may he work in us what is pleasing to him, through Jesus Christ, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen. Hebrews 13:21. You have been, and you will be, and you are being equipped. Tap into it and be at peace. Bless your hearts.
Thank you, Dr. McKenzie. Thank you for that too. And I do encourage our viewers, do share this recording with anyone that you know can benefit from it. And also, this is also your way of helping others. So share it and comment, ask any questions. Dr. McKenzie, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time. And thank you for your love, your prayers. Thank you for your wisdom. And we do want to hear from you more, and we will invite you next time to share a little bit more and go a little deeper in different areas that we can also benefit from. So this was East Meets West, and thank you for joining.